Chapter 2 of Transforming Darkness, a Shadowwork Toolkit for the Red-Pilled Initiate. The Red-Pilled Initiate is the one who has awakened to the dark side of human civilization that was always there, but was hidden from view until something we saw, heard, or read caused us to look behind the surface of presumed reality. We discovered that human society and culture is not just the product of an organic and random unfolding of affairs, but that to an essential degree, civilization is a system of manipulation, control, and parasitic functions that were previously hidden from us. How this system actually maps out and who is running it is always up for debate, but we can agree that a minority of so-called elites, cross-culturally, are interested in human slavery by whatever means they can devise. If that means physical war, conquest, and the forced conversion of a population to the victor's religion and economic system, that will be the method. If it means a softer system of nudging through propaganda, cultural malware, and pharmaceutical drugging, that will be the system of control. And here's a quote from Aldous Huxley. "It seems to me that the nature of the ultimate revolution with which we are now faced is precisely this, that we are in process of developing a whole series of techniques which will enable the controlling oligarchy, who have always existed and presumably always will exist, to get people actually to love their servitude." We could fill this book with similar quotes, but you are probably already familiar with this kind of statement. Regardless of time and culture, intergenerational controllers are often psychopaths and their type relatives, connected through bloodline or group affiliation. But there is much more to understand in order to explain this situation. The totalitarian impulse is a ubiquitous control drive that is only one flavor of the psychological shadow that we will be discussing. Personally, I make the distinction between civilization itself and the parasitic features of civilization that combine to create what we might call the matrix. I believe that the matrix, as it were, is a function of human consciousness at our current level of development. The elites are acting as surrogate parents who have turned dark because we have failed to take responsibility for our own minds. So these parasites are using them for their own purposes. Although every society has its own feature set, when you see such an integrated system of top-down parasitism and even predation, whether modern or ancient, you can be sure that the population is traumatized and stuck in a regressed psychological state. Hierarchical society is not the same as totalitarianism. Hierarchy in itself is not pathological, as Jordan Peterson has recently made clear, but parasitic elitism is, and it's a collective disease that has roots in the entire population. We're all involved. This is a quote from Morpheus in the film The Matrix. "This is your last chance. After this, there's no turning back. You take the blue pill, the story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to believe. You take the red pill, you stay in Wonderland, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes." Of course, the symbol of the red pill comes from the 1999 film The Matrix, which portrays a dystopic fight with the system that operates behind the mind-controlled citizen. But The Matrix also portrays the plight of the inner-questing hero who confronts the dark side of personal consciousness that must be confronted to psycho-spiritually mature and achieve self-mastery. The Matrix is multi-layered metaphor, and it's a spiritual touchstone for our time. At one level, it can be seen as an analogy for parasitic civilization and systemic mind control from which we must extricate ourselves. But the Matrix as a structural trap also symbolizes ego consciousness, or Maya, with its endogenous shadow programs that torment and distract us from our higher soul purpose and spiritual transcendence. In this context, Neo is the inner alchemist and Gnostic warrior, doing the great work, and awakening to the divine spark within and a new life as a higher spiritual being. 2 paths for the red-pilled initiate. In a video presentation called 2 Paths for the Red-Pilled Initiate, I explored the idea that perhaps there are 2 main paths of questing for the red-pilled individual. The first is what I called the awakened culture warrior, who, after realizing that human beings are being fleeced by whatever group, takes on an activist or problem-solving role to awaken others and to combat evil in the external world. A second path for the one who awakens to the dark side of reality is an inner esoteric path that I call the psycho-spiritual alchemist. This is also the path of the self-healer or wounded healer, spiritual mystic, or shaman of some form. On this path, we are questing for inner gold and battling inner demons. On this path, we are confronting darkness in our own psychological shadows and then helping others to do the same. Of course, facing the personal shadow is the first stage of real self-development work, and it's the first stage of alchemy in all iterations. This inner questing may go on simultaneously with exoteric problem-solving or activism. Those who begin to investigate the dark underbelly of reality are, of course, deemed conspiracy theorists within status quo culture, and this tends to lead them into a state of discord with mainstream society. Some turn back out of fear of social abandonment, the blue-pilled, but the red-pilled initiate continues on, pushing further into an anti-establishment outsider direction, and a hero's journey unfolds from there. This is also the archetypal pattern of initiation and why I use the term initiate. The universal pattern of initiation goes something like this. A traumatic event separates an individual from their normal pattern in life, takes them through a treacherous ordeal that foundationally alters their view and orientation in life. This new way is itself an evolutionary gift or boon, and they return back to the world reformed. From here, they can give back something useful, healing, or evolutionary to society. This initiation pattern is Joseph Campbell's hero's journey, and on the esoteric or inward-facing side, it's the alchemical magnum opus, or the great work. This pattern is embedded into the collective unconscious of mankind. It's driving all development in life, and if you are red-pilled, a truther, or a seeker, this alchemical hero archetype is back there pushing on you. Evil lives within us all. Repeat 5 times. Getting back to the business of the shadow, I regularly present the theory that human darkness, or what we call evil, is more than just a problem of human behavior, psychopaths, or depraved culture, but it is a function of human consciousness that must be primarily worked out at the individual psychospiritual level and then extended out to all levels of human organization. This was, of course, Jung's position. The mind is an organic operating system, and culture is the mimetic substrate that networks minds together into what I call the culture mind. Dr. Dan Siegel describes the mind as an embodied and relational field of energy and information, which is a very useful definition. Since the psychic shadow energies behind what we call evil are functions within the field of mind, evil can be seen as a field or network phenomenon. It can also be seen as similar to a computer or biological virus. You cannot be in the world and not be exposed to the psychic energies behind what we call evil. And if you're susceptible, the virus of evil will grow within you and convert you into a carrier and a spreader. Once you fully understand this, there is no going back. From this position, you can really advance as you start to become conscious of how you are personally participating in the generation and projection of evil through your psychological shadow. From here, you can engage in personal shadow work and reduce that darkness in yourself and become much healthier and more advanced as a human being in the process. The implications of this are gigantic, so naturally, the internal pushback on the one who commits to change this reality is also formidable, making shadow work a true hero's journey with powerful real-world implications. And this chapter ends with a quote from C. Michael Smith of Crow's Nest Shamanism. While there has been a long history of spiritual healers who drew on the realm of light for healing, they were not dealing with the more treatment-resistant and traumatic forms of sickness or the powerful demonic forces that caused soul loss. For these symptoms, the shaman initiated into what we now call shadow work were needed. It was the shaman who had to face and get to know the shadow realms and what they required, often because of their own traumatic sickness and initiations. The shaman were the world's first depth psychological masters. They created cartographies of the psyche, albeit mythopoetic in nature, and they learned to navigate by means of these resources. They developed skill in dealing effectively with the dark forces causing malaise, serious injury, and sickness, and equally with the forces of light, inspiration, and vision. Anyone doing shadow work today is a little bit shaman.